When it comes to winter riding gear, I've never been very picky. Aside from a set of insulated riding bibs I got on Amazon, everything I use for riding winter conditions is something I already had. The base layers, for example, I got 10 years ago for when I would run outside, and the pants I usually wear are some that I wear every day. Even my shoes have traditionally been whatever pair of insulated boots I had at the time because I live in a cold place and they're a necessity for daily life. It's been a pretty decent setup that I've been happy with for years. But then Patrick from Blivet Sports reached out and asked if I'd be interested in reviewing some of his products, including his two cycling specific boot offerings. He sent both the Quilo Clipless boots and the FLT flat pedal specific boot. Despite having a rather disappointing snow year, I've been using them the past several months on snow and dirt rides in temps down to -10 Fahrenheit. Have these boots changed my tune on cycling specific gear, or am I still on the use what you got train? Let's get into it. Blivet Sports is a bike apparel company based in Quebec City, Canada, and it's mostly focused on gear for winter riding. Patrick, the founder and owner, has been in the bike industry for 25 years and worked for some well known brands. As an avid fat biker, he quickly became frustrated with the price and design of the very small winter boot market, and he decided to throw his hat in the ring. I spoke with him on Zoom for over an hour, during which his passion and intentional design choices became very clear. Now, I don't know a whole lot about what goes into shoe or boot construction and design, but as he went over everything from the choice of rubber on the outside to the number of layers of midsole and the design of the toe box, I quickly realized there's more to it than I thought. As I mentioned, he sent two different models, the Quilo and the FLT. They're essentially identical in many ways, with a nice and wide toe box, waterproof outer material, and a nice and flexible upper so your ankle can move unrestricted while pedaling. They both also feature Vibrum's XS Trek rubber compound, which, according to Patrick's kitchen freezer testing, retains the most grip in cold temperatures. The Quilo model has a removable rubber plate that will fit 2-bolt cleats if you want to ride clipless, while the FLT has a typical flat pedal shoe pattern with some added ridges to keep you from slipping in the snow. There's also some additional rubber around the toe and heel of the FLT to keep the pins on your pedals from tearing the shoe up when things get a little out of hand. Blivet's boots use a two-lace system which uses Kevlar laces and an easy-to-use auto-locking slider to tighten them. They opted for this over the popular BOA system because if something does happen to break, you can run normal laces instead of having to hunt down BOA-specific ones. Both boots also feature 200 grams of Thinsulate insulation, which may cause many people to scratch their heads. For an insulated winter boot, 200 grams is really just where things get started, so it doesn't seem like it'd be all that warm. When speaking with Patrick, he said the idea here was to design a boot for the majority of winter riding days, not the 10% of the time an Arctic front rolls in and drops things well into the negatives. For a vast swath of the fat bike market, that means 0 to 15 degrees or so Fahrenheit, and at those temperatures, I found the boots to be perfect even with your everyday socks. When I did go for rides in the negatives, I found that some good wool socks kept things nice and toasty and didn't feel cramped due to the extra wide fit in the front. I also got to test it out in some unseasonably warm weather and found that once you hit the high 40s, it can even get a little too warm. That smaller amount of insulation also keeps the boots light and slim, which makes hike-a-bikes easy and prevents rubbing on the cranks. Like I said, Patrick paid attention to the details and thought things out, and I think it really shows. Now let's get into some of the specific experiences I've had with each boot. I tend to like flat pedals in the winter for a variety of reasons, so I'll admit I've spent a lot more time using the FLTs over the Quilo. Since the beginning of my fat bike years, I've used whatever hiking boots I had at the time, both for their waterproofness and the insulation. They've worked totally fine, but there are definitely some aspects that can make your flat pedal experience suboptimal. For one, the sole is typically designed for traction, with large knobs and bumps to keep you from slipping while hiking. That doesn't always work out so great when you want your foot really engaged with the pedal pins as much as possible. The second is that aside from a hardcore mountaineering boot, the soles aren't nearly as stiff as the average mountain bike shoe. Your whole foot isn't resting on the pedal, so having some added stiffness through the bottom of the shoe helps you transfer your power more fully and stay a little more planted. The FLT doesn't have either of those issues. The sole does have some grooves for traction, but it's generally much smoother than your average hiking boot. I found it to engage with flat pedals much like a summer shoe, and that's including in cold temperatures thanks to that excess Trek rubber compound. The boot is also fairly stiff on the bottom. It's nowhere near as rigid as a clipless shoe, which needs an ultra stiff platform, but it has enough to not feel any flex downwards from your heel while still being flexible enough to be really comfortable when you do need to hike a bike. That said, while the tread pattern on the bottom does great on a flat pedal and packed or crusty snow, it can be a little bit slippery and steep in soft conditions. That's honestly probably my only complaint with the boot. But if they change the bottom too much for those situations, it'd probably be compromising the pedaling experience. When I first got these boots, I posted a poll about them asking what the preference for winter riding was, flats or clipless. I was surprised to find a lot of people messaging me with how much they love clipless for riding in the snow. My experience has been limited, but my biggest complaint is how snow gets stuck around the cleat when you step off the bike. This means that as soon as you go to ride again, you have to slam your foot into the pedals or on a rock until the snow and ice breaks off so you can clip in again. Quilo doesn't solve this issue, but what it does solve is my other major problem, freezing feet. As I mentioned, this boot has the same insulation and everything as the FLT, and I found it to be equally warm and dry even in cold and snowy rides. On top of that, Blivet focused on how to insulate the area under your foot where the cleat is mounted. Many winter riding shoes seem to overlook this spot when they add the mounting plate, and it can result in a cold spot on the bottom of your foot. I've experienced this phenomenon on more than one winter ride in my summer shoes, and it's a major factor in why I gave up on clipless in the cold. I can't remember every little detail, but Patrick spoke at length at how they resolved this with a combination of silicone tape and an EVA material to keep it nice and insulated. After a few rides in them, his solution seems to have worked flawlessly. Unfortunately, there just aren't a whole lot of winter riding boots out there for biking in the snow. Aside from a few one-offs, 45 North and Blivet seem to be the only brands focused on fat bike boots. I've heard good things about the 45 North options, the Wolfhammer and Wolfgar, but they're fairly pricey, a bit bulky, and only come with the BOA option, which some people, including myself, don't really like. They're also designed specifically for clipless riding, so while they do have a bolt-on rubber patch if you want to use them on flat pedals, the tread on the sole isn't really designed with pin engagement in mind. As far as I know, Blivet's FLT is the only flat-specific winter boot, so if you're anti-clipping in, it's great to have an option out there. I also really like the lightweight and low-profile design of these boots because it seems like you never know when or how much bike pushing you'll be doing, and heavy boots can make it a miserable experience. Blivet's options come in a bit cheaper than most at around $300 for the Quilo and $227 for the FLT. That might cause some sticker shock for some of you, but insulated boots are just expensive in general, so for a pair with cycling-focused design and optimized for running clipless or flat pedals, it's really not all that bad. So, am I converted to cycling-specific winter boots? Well, more than I thought I'd be. If you ride enough in the winter and can afford it, it's a nice touch to make the ride feel more normal and enjoyable. I'll still probably never say winter riding boots are a must-have. Again, I did totally fine for more than 5 years without them, but they'd for sure be at the top of my list over basically any other winter riding gear. And when it comes to clipless versus flats in the winter, I think I'm basically a 50-50 guy now. Let me know down in the comments what you think of these boots and tell me about your winter gear setup. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and consider leaving a super thanks donation. I'm all self-funded here, and any additional money goes straight back into the content I produce. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.